Hello, Bettina.
Hello,
Good
Zachary.
morning.
Good
Yeah,
morning. Thank you so much for having me.
it is our honor to have you come and speak with us.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just say good morning to everybody from New York. I'm sure it's evening for some of you in other places around the globe. Um, as always, very excited to have everyone here and to be part of this community in this learning process. I would like to welcome Bettina. Thank you for taking time today to come and speak with us. And for everyone on the call, let me first go ahead. And, it is recording. Okay, perfect. And I'd like to just quickly introduce Bettina, who's a rock star here visiting us today. So Bettina is the founder and creative director of Bettymedia, a creative studio that designs brand and digital experiences and collaborates with companies that are transitioning to Web3 and NFTs. They provide marketing ideas to NFT creators, produce videos and films for advertisements and corporations. Bettina has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Graphic Design with a minor in Art History from the New York Fashion Institute of Technology. And for over 13 years, she and her team have worked with companies such as Citi, IBM, Louis Vuitton, and several film festivals. Before her design career and starting her studio in 2008, she worked on Wall Street as a financial analyst, an experience that led her to produce a video demo and design a user experience for one of Citi's trading platforms, where she learned about Bitcoin. And in 2017, she leapt into the crypto rabbit hole and has never looked back. Bettymedia has delivered in blockchain space for the first crypto fitness studio, backed by Pitbull and Tim Draper, and recently also the e-commerce in the Metaverse and NFT NYC. And her latest initiatives are educating on security-first user experience, mentoring young women in the arts, and providing Bitcoin and financial literacy from a historical perspective. So, Bettina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And please add if there's anything else that you would like to add in terms of an introduction.
Nope. Well, you got it pretty much the bulk of it. So this is exciting. And thank you so much again for inviting me on this call. You know, UX is one of my, it's basically my big passion, and it completely needed in the space. We need more UX designers in the space. And because the web is evolving rapidly. And
Amazing.
I hope on this call, you know, this will give everyone a clear understanding what UX is, and hopefully, you know, you can get into the space as well and help out.
Wonderful. I want to encourage everyone to go ahead and just kind of put their questions into the chat as they come up and arise. And Bettina, when you finish talking, I'd love to come back and kind of address any specific questions that people have.
Yeah. Should I look into the chat, or you will give it to me?
I would say maybe just kind of up to you if you prefer to kind of pause throughout your talk and answer questions, or if you prefer to talk and then later come back and answer questions.
Well, let's start first before you can, you know, throw me the question, but let's first start why we're here, because Web3, that's why everybody's talking about right now, and Metaverse. And Web3 is the next iteration of the web. It's pretty simple. It's driven by the blockchain, which is a decentralized ledger. It's a technology that has existed since the 80s. So it's nothing, you know, fairly new. But the blockchain became a big thing because it was a technology that was used by Satoshi Nakamoto, who developed Bitcoin. This is where it all started. So Bitcoin was launched in, you know, after the financial crash of 2008. And then as it evolved, the space evolved, where we see various crypto and tokens being launched on blockchain with their own blockchains, like the Ethereum blockchain, ETH. And the blockchain use cases has been the big one, NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. And that is all part of Web3. So Web3, the idea has always been that it is decentralized. It differs from Web2. And Web1 is kind of somewhat similar to Web3, meaning that when Web1 began, when we were on the internet, we weren't providing so much information of ourselves. It was peer-to-peer. One of the first Web1 use case was Tor. Tor still exists. It's a Tor network. It still exists. Journalists all around the world use it to gain access to data from individuals, from whistleblowers. Chat rooms were decrypted. So that was Web1. Then Web2 began, where social media became the drive. Major entities where they held so much of our data, and we became the product. Web3 is saying, you are no longer the product. The users are no longer the product. You control your data. There will not be KYC collected. KYC means know your customers. This is one of the most controversial areas, because you have those who've been in traditional business, in government, in finance, who feels that, how do you maintain trust? How do you verify identities? There are multitudes of ways to verify identities without collecting users' private information. And so KYC was developed. That it had evolved for a very long time, but really when it really began was after the 9/11, where the United States and the international community decided, hey, we have to have banks collect data from users, from customers, and provide all this information. But what ended up happening was they stated that KYC was to combat money laundering. But it basically did not happen. It actually ramped money laundering. Our data is sold in the block market. This is important for users to understand why their information, why they get hacked, why their data is being done whatever many ways, shape, or form, and they're not being paid for their data. And so Web3 is saying, you maintain your data. Your digital identity isn't connected to your real one. You use avatars for your NFT PFP. PFP means profile picture, that you may have seen with JPEGs, where you see people putting their profile images as, apes and various artwork, crypto artwork that they have collected or created. And then the next one, which is vital to the user in Web2, if you notice, when we log in, like we just logged in here, I had to enter my name, I had to enter my email. There's no longer any of that in Web3. And we're already seeing it where you log in with your wallet. There is not this. User experience designers has been, designing these various logins and buttons. That's all going away slowly. And we're seeing that. And so the idea of connecting to your wallet at every point on the internet allows you to play, collect, learn, purchase, shop, trade, you name it. Your attention on social media, that is also a big one. If you're on Brave browser, they are a platform that basically incentivize you for your attention, because we are in the attention economy. And so this is big because users will be their own, not only, I always hated the term users because it does kind of fall into the area of they are quote unquote drug addicts. And this is one of the things we've always said in the space, and even social. There was a documentary on Netflix called The Social Network. I forgot what it's called, but they said the same thing. We've always been saying, I didn't like the term. Users are no longer, are going to be collectors, creators, and they're going to be the stakeholders of pretty much everything on the internet. So when brands and companies are coming into Web3, stating they are Web3 company, you will notice that those in the, is a perfect use case is NFT community, who are like, hold a minute, you know, you need to understand the community first. You have to get a, you know, be consistent, understand what's happening. Don't just try to sell us anything, because at the end of the day, they are the creators, everyone in the space is basically driving the space. It's a collaborative effort. And so brands and businesses are not understanding that, and why a couple of them have been called out, particularly some NFT ape, we won't name who, they were called out recently because of their recent major token launch. And, you know, who holds, because that's one of the biggest one, is because as companies are getting into the space, they are stating that they obligated to collect KYC and all of this data, when they're not obligated. That's one of the things, they're not. But they've made people believe that is the case. And, you know, NFTs are not JPEGs. They are basically, it places the power of choice in the hands of every individual, every users, by allowing them to create a programmable logic that defines their price and nature of their data offering. So that NFT can hold pretty much anything. It could hold, you know, photos, videos, audios, but also vital information of yourself that you may want to, hey, you know, sell to the highest bidder, particularly the medical community, who've been pretty much, you know, wanting to do research. And it falls under the line of the Belmont report, which was, you know, where the medical community stated, hey, you know, we cannot, it's the idea of basically collecting people's data and ensuring that you are following the ethical principles and guidelines for protection of human subjects of research. And so quite a lot of our data is being manipulated, being used in nefarious ways, and we don't know where it is. And Web3 is allowing users to get back that data. Now, where Metaverse comes in, the Metaverse, it's 3D virtual worlds. You know, it always existed in the gaming community. That's always existed. Metaverse was coined by Neil Stephenson in 1995 in a book called Snow Crash. It's a sci-fi book, and I read it a few years ago. It's basically this whole idea of virtual real estate is owned by this global entity protocol group, and it has a fictional corporation association that the computers are running everything, and then the users can gain access to the metaverse through this terminal, and it projects these, basically what you're seeing, projects these high quality virtual immersive reality displays, and they connected with goggles. At the time, that's what Stevenson called it, goggles. And the users are not called users, they are called gargoyles. And so basically, Metaverse wasn't created by Zuckerberg. And Metaverse doesn't have to be dystopia, dystopia, take a what, again, English is my third language, pardon me, so I'm trying to remember some of these words. And it can be fun, it can be used for good. At the end of the day, the space do need user experience designer, not just user experience designers. The space needs psychologists, medical experts in the space, because here's the thing about the metaverse when it comes to metaverse. So user experience, often people misunderstand what exactly that we do. And when it comes to user experience, it's not about making things pretty. It isn't. This is about ways to understand, focus on learning about people's behavior, psychology, the dynamics of society. I was brought up about the government and, the history of a bit of history of finance, the world which we live in, the logic and the theory of design. That's what UX design is. Don Norman, who is the godfather of UX design, he is the man that was involved in what we see today, Apple, Apple pretty much. He was the designer of many of the Apple, not designer, but the researcher, the man who came on board, who helped Steve Jobs create and build Apple. And the father stated from the very beginning, user experience encompasses all aspects of end users' interaction with a company, with a brand, its services, and its product. And so oftentimes companies, entrepreneurs comes and they call user experience designers, oh, I want to make things pretty. But when you ask them about the scenario, if their platform makes sense to the people they are trying to target, they did not do that homework. Research is lacking, so we need researchers. And it has to be a self-starting initiative by us. Most of what I've been doing has been me doing it alone with my team, meaning that we just had to take it on ourselves. Because at the end of the day, what has happened is businesses and who want to get into Web3 often are relying on developers, and developers are not in the space of UX design. They're not designers. Developers and programmers are not designers. And so that is why users have had a hard time when they get on platforms or VR or AR, they get motion sickness, and sometimes they are disoriented. So the best practices for user experience has been consistent. We've said, provide consistency, provide guidelines. You have to design scenarios, create usability testings. Don't expect users to read lots of text. There's also the accessibility issues. If oftentimes I watch gamers on YouTube. I love watching gamers on YouTube play a new game, and oftentimes, they'll play with their device. They'll try to fix the device. Something goes wrong, and oftentimes they shouting at the screen, and all I keep thinking is, okay, why not use some voice recognition? Like, why are we not using voice enough? There's always this idea of designing for the interface, but forget the voice and forget motion, because that also is going to be vital in the world of the metaverse. Is the idea of wearing haptic suits. Haptic suits have been around since the 90s, and when it comes to building these kinds of virtual spaces and games, and those are fun, but there's also simulations that you may want to use for training purposes, for doctors, for police officers, for firefighters. Those, I would say that you must have medical experts, psychologists on board when you're doing these type of training programs, because at the end of the day, because this is an ethical issue, because you also have to think about the psychological factors, which are, people must suffer from PTSD, anxiety issues. They have lots of phobia. I've had where I've been on VR, and when it comes to when I'm on VR, I've done a roller coaster ride. I don't like roller coaster in real life. And it turns out in VR, in the world of virtual, I still don't like it. Recently, one of my colleagues in the space of design was brought up skydiving. I happen to be a real life skydiving enthusiast, but I can't see a skydiver enthusiast in loving VR, because it would never provide that same real life emotional connection as you would in real life, because we do feel our feet on the ground in VR versus when you're up in the sky. It's a whole different ball game. You could offer the simulation, but that simulation will never be truly similar to the real thing. And so, but yes, I do think so let's just quickly go through the UX best practices. It's, again, understanding the people, the users, what you're building for, visualizing, creating prototypes of the process of interaction, what that looks like. Have the community. If you're going to be in Web3, and Web3 metaverse, what does that interaction look like? Decentralized land may be not, yet fully there, but if you notice that you can connect with your wallet, there are coordinated areas where you can go to certain places. I've gone into the Centraland movie theater, and that was fun, and so making it comfortable and easy, accessible. So maybe users may not want to use a goggle. They could, a VR headset, they can use their phones, they can use their desktop, meet them where they are. And then, the next one is the biggest one, is making users comfortable. I noticed so many times users are not comfortable enough. And you have to be very intentional with the goal of what you're trying to do. And then understanding the headsets. Various headsets have, various guidelines. So understanding what your users are going to use, prevent motion sickness, and of course the sudden changes, and it's the standard similar, and keeping consistent throughout the user experience process. I think that's about it for now. But yes, again, let me reiterate, Web3 is the driver to connect and play and earn and learn and earn, you name it. Date and earn, you name it. You are not the product, you are a stakeholder in the Web3. Metaverse is part of it, and the metaverse is pretty much the virtual world. There will be phygital. It may not necessarily be all virtual. It could be, I was planning, I completely had forgotten that I was going to wear my virtual earrings. Zoom started with the avatars. I was going to be a little rabbit. I haven't played around with my rabbit avatar, but sometimes I don't want to wear lipstick and makeup. I want to be a rabbit. So it's, having fun with the space, but also I don't believe that everyone's going to be on the internet 24/7 all the time. It's just like we're doing right now. We still want to meet people in real life, but we still want to connect with them on the net. And yeah, and that's about it.
Wow. Bettina, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I love the detail in the overview and the understanding, even with the historical perspective. I saw that Yip just put in a question that I'd love to follow up with right now, which is, what are some great ways to efficiently and effectively collect community feedback?
Oh, well, that's perfect. So if you notice an NFT space, if you're not in the NFT space, but if you created an NFT project, build communities on a Telegram, Discord, bring them on. That way, you get their feedback right then and there. If you are creating like YouTubers, they'll ask, their viewers to subscribe, right? But they'll get feedback in the comment section. You don't know how many times businesses are not looking at their comment sections. They don't even hire a community manager to skim the internet or social media. Do that. Engage with your users or your followers. I engage with my followers. And as a business owner, I have to. And so bigger businesses often have a tough time because they are so afraid of their customer. Because they always thinking on a legal and they don't want to say the wrong thing. Again, it's hiring. There are people who can do that. And so community builders are very different from community managers. So somebody can be a community builder, but they're not great at managing. So it's understanding those two things. Community management is pretty much customer service. That's what it is, and when you're doing user experience research, this is where you work with the community manager. Marketers in traditional sense have been the driver of, selling products and services. That has been a problem in the UX space because oftentimes the marketers have the connection with the control with the customers, and the UX designers and researchers are not having access to the customers. This time, it's no longer the case. It's not going to be the case any longer. And that's why we've been having all these issues, right? In Web 2, because there is this point where people want to maintain power. And I completely understand. Marketers or sellers, they have to understand what their roles are. But at the same time, Web3 is about this massive collaborative effort. And it's not a hierarchy, even though there is this level of businesses who say, well, we are Web3, but they still play like a hierarchy. And that's a problem. Artists are now, SZA actually created an initiative where she's going to provide ways to interact directly with her fans. And so the connecting with her fans directly, not the music studio and not the music business, the record company. It's her. She wants to do that. And we already seeing that in Instagram, where artists are connecting through the IG stories. They are talking to their users, and businesses and brands and collectors and creators can do the same. Now, you may have seen I don't do enough of that. I'm not often, because I'm the one helping behind the scenes, those who want to be in the forefront. If you are in business, allow your team to be doing that. Maybe the CEO is not doing that in a business, but have the team and the people around you doing it. And that's really it really going to be about that, and then incentivizing them, because that's all part of that too in the Web3.
Right.
Is the idea sounds a bit utopia? Yeah, but it's doable. It just takes effort. It takes individuals, removing their ego and control and allowing, things to happen. Beautiful things happen in the space of the world of crypto. Even though it's wild, wild west, but so many great things have happened, while, yes, bad things have happened. But again, you need that kind of craziness it's kind of like a storm, you need rain to clean the air out, and we start all over again.
Mm-hmm. I want to follow up just with a personal question, which is, how important is diversity in creating user experience, in understanding that different people coming from different backgrounds, having different experiences, speaking different languages, are going to have different expectations and different experiences, right?
Yes, they're all going to have different expectations. But also diversity, I've come to realize, have different meaning for different people. What my definition of diversity may be different from you, from others. What has happened is we have many people have come, some people see it as diverse in skills, while others think it's diverse in physicality and, as you said, language and all of that. The thing about the Web3 world is that there are still individuals who do still see, they must see the person to feel connected and be involved in a project. I am a female CEO and woman of color. I get that. But I do not like, and most female CEOs and women of color, most, I would hope so, but would not want people to choose them based on just that alone. I am a designer, and this is my core, this is what I've done for a long time. I'm a creator and filmmaker and all of that. At the end of the day, I want people to choose me based on my work. And for people like me, Web3 is great because you don't need to see my face. You don't need to see who I am, my age, my gender, whether, English is not my first language, is third. The amount of times throughout my years of being in business, I can just remember how many times I've been made shame because of my English not being proper. That's going away. To some people, this is important to them. They want to know whether or not you can speak perfect English or whatever language they are going, who is behind some of the work. There was that situation last year where there was this NFT scandal where this project they stated it was female led. It turns out they were Russian men behind the scene. And it was a big hoopla. At the same time, I had to ask, they are Russian. And you think they are, maybe may not want to say they are, since everyone, many people are, are asking questions about gender, what is gender? Could they be females? Could they be women? No one could answer that for me, but some people said, no, they are men. We don't really know because they're in Russia and we saw what's been going on. And so the space in the web allows people to be creative with their identity and not be judged. And so it's up to you to choose how you see diversity should be. My definition of diversity is, not just a person or whatever, all of that, but it's the work. The work has to be consistent. We don't know Satoshi Nakamoto, but the fact that Bitcoin launched, it's been consistent now for how many years? And everything that this persons wrote on the blogs online has come to fruition. So their word, it's kind of like dating. When you date, are you dating based on somebody's physicality, age? Yes, there's certain things, parameters, and you have to consider. But you hope that person is, consistent with their word. Those are building blocks for trust. So that's how I feel about that. But it is important. But the space has allowed also where women in places, parts of the world who have no control of their money. That's another thing. Most places in the world, women do not have control of their money. And for them, they can go anonymously online and choose to connect however they like and be able to earn. And so I think it's having those options. You also have to consider these things. And not everyone lives in the Western world where, we can easily get in front and speak about everything, while others may not have that luxury or that privilege to do so.
Yeah. Thank you so much for pointing that out. And I've heard people talk about that before. In countries where women may need permission to be able to open a bank account from her husband, etc., and how this is really, as we say, permissionless and trustless.
And it's still and by the way, it's not just other countries. There's still people here, women here, that can't do that. So it's more so other countries, but we can't think that these little things are not happening in westernized world, so keep that in mind.
Great. I want to switch course just a little bit and go back to a question that Lisa Kaufman had, which is, what's the utility of Metaverse? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it is right now and what you think it might become.
Well, right now, the Metaverse, like I said, it's a 3D virtual world. Hasn't yet been a real utility per se. A perfect example, I do think, that kind of somewhat similar to what I will say kind of falls a little bit on the Metaverse is Twitch, the platform where it is similar to YouTube, but if you've ever been on Twitch, they have all these little, avatars and in tokens and, all these little things that people can do. And so there is a utility where individuals get to earn from their creation at every point. And so in the, again, 3D virtual world, when you get into this, like a perfect example, Decentraland, I remember when I went to the first movie theater in Decentraland, there was a little bin where I could connect my wallet and incentivize the filmmakers,
Mm,
and so that goes into somebody's wallet right there.
mhm.
Um, the fashion industry just had their fashion, the first fashion, week in the metaverse, where here's a perfect example. I went to Fashion Institute of Technology, and I remember the amount of stuff at school we have collected, like samples and garments. The world of fashion has been complaining about where's the sustainability? And the sustainability hasn't been there for a long time because fast fashion has always been happening. And if you're a fashion designer, you could be creating an experience and showing your collection and having people choose and seeing how it, if they would want it, and say, okay, I want this. Can you create that custom design for me? Instead of creating all these samples. So the utility in the metaverse allows people to see things, you know, um, scenarios that of what happens in real life and bring it onto the 3D virtual world in order for them to, like I said, interact with the brands, but also, be able to try things on without having to hurt the environment. That's one scenario. Another scenario is that the attention economy. We're in the attention economy. We go on Twitter, we're consuming all this information, and our time is so valuable to these companies. Here's that time you could be incentivized. And for marketer researchers for these companies, we're collecting this information. How long this person used this, the algorithm will push more other information like similar to that.
Right.
Why not incentivize? So that's how I see. You gotta have to think about certain things that are in the real world that you can bring onto to metaverse. So, but again, it's really, at the end of the day, you are not collecting people's data. It will always be about that wallet and what they, how there is that whole like value, who is
Mhm.
that's going to be a big thing. I think that's an area that's going to be a major talking point, because in the NFT, that ape scenario where certain people had a massive collection of apes while others don't, and they get to have more access than the other, so it creates this class warfare. And so that part where I'm kind of like, that could be a problem right there.
Right. Right.
Access is in the form of utility too, so yeah, but yeah.
Right. We're coming up on our time, but I saw that
Yes, yes.
Govind asked, can we experience the metaverse without VR headsets?
Yeah. So there are developers and designers who are creating, again, metaverse is 3D virtual worlds. There are developers and designers building these little case where you can see a hologram being displayed of an individual. So you could be talking to grandma from miles away, and that's her hologram being projected to you. Or you interact with them in this, cubicle. I've thought about, okay, could there be a cubicle that is really cool, immersive, like in Star Trek, called the holodeck? Zuckerberg is talking about the goggles, and I'm like, I'm not a fan of the goggles all the time, 24/7. But why not create maybe cubicles if you want your workers to be back in the office? Create similar experience like a holodeck that you see in Star Trek, where the cubicle creates a whole, like I could be thinking I'm in Jamaica, you know.
Mhm.
I love trains, but sometimes I'm passing by, and it would be great instead of the locations, you know, the location access, sometimes it's not great. But sometimes you don't get all of this information from the what's going on locally. And I remember going through Switzerland, and I like seeing these beautiful beautiful towns, and all I kept thinking was like, what's this little place? What's this little place? I would have loved to have the screen, my window, creating this immersive experience while I'm playing, but also I could be connecting um, to see maybe the historical situation, you know, throughout that town if I wanted to. Um, um, at the same time, I could be connecting with a local on virtual without a headset, but just seeing the screen. Again, the headset is just one example. So that you don't necessarily, I connect all the time to the metaverse just on my desktop, Decentraland, Fortnite, you name it. You don't need the goggles. So, but there's this idea that the goggles is what, if you want to, you want to. But it does allow for you to see your whole space, but there are people who are creating like environments where you're coming into a space where you're somewhere else.
Which brings me, as we close up, I wanted to ask if there are people here in the chat, in the on the program, that are interested in, like, I've never experienced this. Like, where are a couple places you would say, just to get an introduction, go check out a few of these spaces? What would you recommend?
Decentraland is fun. You know, it's you know, it's a little bit clunky, but it's just showing you an example of exactly what it's going to entail. You can create your own, you know, headset if you like with cardboard. There's like tutorials on YouTube if you wanted to do that. But like I said, you know, you can go on this. Decentraland is so accessible. It's great. Sandbox is another one. You can purchase real estate. You can create, you can start building real estate, because that's going to be really cool down the line where, you know, you have real estate in the virtual space where you could be, you know, asked by, you know, a massive name brand, hey, can I put my logo at your, you know, space while this event is happening in your space, you know, and you can be incentivized for that. So Decentraland, Sandbox is one. There are others, but I mean, I would say the gaming community, you know, play around in the world of gaming. Watch gamers online. Sometimes they'll play a game, um, you know, that is incredible. The world of Unreal Engine. Start familiarizing yourself with the folks at the Unreal Engine, because that is an area where things are becoming realistic. I do have a thing about that too, because if you're going to create realities that are so realistic, you may have you I think it will be ethically wise to ensure to inform the users they are in a virtual world and not be, you know, our brains could easily be warped where we're like, is this real life or is not? So because I've started asking those questions. I mean, are we really in a simulation? Those are big questions. So, but if when you're a designer, you must ethically think about, okay, could this warp somebody's idea if things become too realistic? Because our brain is very fragile.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today, and raising some of these questions and giving us ideas to think about as we move forward. Is there any last thing that you would like to say before we end the session?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully this helps anyone. I mean, this was more of a introduction to what Web3 and Metaverse is, understand that there are people who are stating they are that, but I say that the longer you're in this space, the more you will understand about what it is all about, what many people are trying to achieve and accomplish. Um, Oftentimes I'm being asked about what books to read. I will say one book I will recommend is The Marketing New Realities by Kathy Hackle, the godmother of Metaverse, and Samantha G. Wolf. Samantha G. Wolf came to my Cake and UX event, my first Cake and UX event, where she talked about AR and VR and blockchain. And so some of the things she brought up in this book, her and Kathy, is coming to fruition. And so are there lots of books out there? And some are, some not, but again, play, continue to play and don't assume anything.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Bettina, thank you so much. And thank you
Welcome.
everyone who was part of this conversation, and to all of you who will listen to it later.
And if you need to reach me, I can be reached at info@bettymedia.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn at BETTINNA, and my Twitter is BETTINNA. I'm mostly on Twitter doing a lot of research and interacting with people there. So start following me on Twitter, and then but also reach me at info@bettymedia.com.
How do you spell Bettymedia?
Oh yes, info, INFO at BETTY, M as in Mary, EDIA.com. So INFO at BETTYMEDIA.com.
Awesome. Betty, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody here with us.
Thank you very much. Have a
Have a
good
great day.
Thank you.